Howdy, church. I'm back from the BGCT. My heart is in other places right now, but it is my duty, I believe, to give you all a report on how I've represented the church and what is going on in our association. So I'm going to take the time now, or it's never going to happen. The facts, high-level reports, I'm not really going to go over each motion. It's a business meeting. There's a lot of business. It's done in specific ways. I'm not going to go over every motion and the order it was given. Instead of the letter of the law, I would like to very briefly give you the spirit of the law, the spirit of what we were discussing. First of all, there were two candidates for president. Long story short, it was a male and a female. Do we support a female being the president? Probably a wonderful lady, tons of leadership experience, probably do a wonderful job. It is not, in fact, a pastoral position. Just to give you my position on things, the lady, Miss Debbie Potter, was in fact voted as our president. This is not a make or break issue for me. Like I said, it's not a pastoral position per se, but I did vote against her. She is leading churches and thus leading the leaders of churches. I see it, though it is not a pastor, she is pastoring in some ways, in the same way that the director of missions and or executive director of a local association leads pastors. For those reasons, while I could understand arguments in both directions, I think the preponderance of arguments would say that it should be a man as president. But the BGCT openly supports women as pastors, let alone as president, and we're still members of the BGCT. I've talked about this a little bit before. We're not necessarily gunning to leave the BGCT strictly over this issue. But I did vote against it. It did pass. Before I get into the two major issues there was a talk that meant something to me about abuse prevention by the organization Abuse Prevention, which I'm hoping to partner with as we look over our children's program. Basically, they helped me in my own mind as we prepare to look at our structure, to think about the risks to our children and how to categorize those risks. In short, the risk to our children is external and internal. We think a lot about external, not as much about internal. Internally, it can be an adult on child, or it can be a child on child, peer on peer. Especially that last thing, peer on peer, is what we don't think about. So, and then he gave a number of nuts and bolts examples, things I won't go into in this video, but there's just a lot to contemplate. We need to take care of our children. I have utmost faith, confidence, and trust in every member of our church and every person who is working with our children. Nonetheless, we are playing fast and loose, and that's a breeding ground for problems. So we will be tightening that up. Will be. It's necessary. But that's going to come in committees and staff meetings and stuff as we slowly work towards. It's an ongoing work, and this just gave me some food for thought as we continue together to brainstorm on how to do better what God has called us to do. All right, the two big issues. Again, not going over necessarily each motion related to, but in the spirit was, one, how do you view what's called the GC2, which is the Great Commandment, Great Commission, which is just a name for an entity. And then second, what you think about Baylor University. And we'll go in reverse order. So it's talking about Baylor first. Baylor University, if you're not tracking, was founded by the SBC, is funded by the BGCT, received somewhere in the vicinity of $1 million in scholarships and grants to BGCT member students who are members of churches that are part of the BGCT and go to the school. They receive scholarships. Um, I think this is the only way they receive money. I could be wrong. I was a little bit confused as to exactly how the monies are routed. But regardless, we're giving them a lot of money, and that is tithe money. That is cooperative program money given by churches to our association at the state level, given directly from the association to the university. In my mind, this is a big problem. Never mind the great things that the school did in the past. Never mind the long-standing history we have. I acknowledge all of that. Never mind, I'm not a great fan of Truett, but I'm sure they've done some good things in the past. I just have to do more research on what. I mean, I'm not trying to be overly critical of my brothers and sisters from Truett. I really have problems with some of their theology currently, and I'm sure it has changed some over time. So there was an effort to defund them completely. That failed. There was an effort to just look into where they are misaligning with our expectations. That also failed. I spoke as a messenger of Reliance Baptist Church, representing the will of our church. I spoke to that last effort saying, hey, Ephesians 5:3, we should do everything in our power to make sure that there is not even, that we're blameless, and those that we're associated with are blameless. That there is no room for accusations, that we are above reproach. There should be absolutely zero. In my mind, there is no scriptural room to object to the idea of living up to this biblical standard. But it failed. One of the reasons it failed, and I'll make this message, if there's somehow, some way, where somebody on the opposite side of the aisle that happens to see this video, here's my direct message to you. One of the opposition points was, hey, we want to shoot this down now so we don't have to deal with it next year. Unless I see some unbelievably incredible moves by the university, which after all the voting was done, one-on-one, some people suggested might happen. I hope, I pray. But unless I see that, I will personally bring this up every year. So don't think it's behind us just because you voted it down this one time. You're taking $1 million+ of the 2 mites given by the widows of my church, given in faith for God's kingdom work, and you are giving it to a school. I don't care if you're giving it in support of our students or not. It ends up in their pockets to use up as they wish. You better believe this is important to me, and it's going to keep coming up until either our church leaves the BGCT or it changes, or it's going to keep coming up every single year. That's a promise. So that's the first issue. We lost. I lost. Everything that I cared about failed on that front. The second was the GC2. This is a little bit more nuanced. I'm not going to go into all the details right now. In fact, I don't know all the details. I'm learning about this. I'm actively researching about this. It begins to look a lot like the CBF from years past, a growth and entity from within the BGCT that starts to grow into its own entity that begins to be a springboard for all kinds of more liberal ideologies and eventually gets excised from the convention itself. And it seems like history is repeating itself. The GC2 logo was plastered over everything. They're trying to almost make the BGCT synonymous with GC2. I'm not comfortable with this. I'm not happy with this. The BGCT is an association for Texas. I already have a national convention. That's the SBC. I'm not interested in spending our money that's given to the BGCT outside of Texas. I'm interested in work through the BGCT in the state of Texas, Texas Baptists. So I'm highly skeptical. I'll just put it this way. What's more, I keep hearing this ecumenical big tent language being used in association with the GC2. There was an effort made to align anybody that's somehow associated with GC2 but not associated directly with BGCT to be forced to commit to the GC2 statement of faith, which has amazingly disappeared from any possible ability to find anywhere on the internet. It was voted on in 2021. It was actioned by the executive committee in 22. It was referred to on the BGCT website, and now it is gone, disappeared. And the language from the last two executive directors kind of dismissing it and saying it's not important. Seems like a burial of that document. But you're not going to say, look, we have a statement which you can't ever read and look at, and therefore can't claim that we are being liberal, and at the same time pull in all kinds of people that don't stand for what we as Texas Baptists believe in under this big tent ideology. You can't have it both ways. If you're going to stand by something, I want you to stand by it. If we have to, if it's inevitable that we go down this path, then I want something to hold this organization accountable to. If you don't want to use the GC2 statement of faith, then use at least the BFM. But in any case, that was, if you're not familiar, I know this might be a little bit cryptic, but I'm kind of giving you my thoughts, and if you would like to spring into more research on your own, please do. I point out, by the way, because I kept hearing this, including during the convention, talking about Baylor, talking about the BWA, which is a whole nother thing I'll get into in a second. Actually, no, I'm going to get into it right now. There was another issue, a spirit, if you will, was basically if you do or don't support the BWA, which is the Baptist World Alliance, which was kicked out of the SBC 20 years ago. The BWA rejects the LGBT agenda, but it seats leaders who openly support and openly live the LGBT lifestyle. And they affiliate with organizations such as Baptists Together, formerly Great Britain Baptist Union, who openly support. I don't care what they say, I care what they do. Actions speak louder than words. Don't keep pointing at their official statements, at their resolutions, or at their their press conferences. I'm going to point you to what they are actively doing. And what they're actively doing is supporting LGBT. Facts. I spent hours researching them. I didn't even know who they were before this convention. Now I'm quite familiar with who they are. And I'm going to point you, look at some of their member organizations. You see the exact same pattern. The American Baptist Churches USA officially rejects LGBT, but their churches, member churches, openly ordain LGBT practicing clergy. They openly marry lesbian and homosexual couples, and they support it. They march in the pride parades and all of those things. Don't tell me you're against it and then do everything you can to support it. Right? What you're actually doing is supporting it. Your statement means nothing. I would point you to the American Baptist College, which 10 years ago went through this exact same thing, and the National Baptist Convention had to rein them in. They have all these statements. Great. Good on them. What you're doing matters. I'll point you to the Progressive National Baptist Convention. You have the same thing, and they'll hide behind local autonomy. Local autonomy is good. By the way, that's a issue I'm willing to die on. I agree with you. Local autonomy. But if there's a church out there who, based on local autonomy, says we support murder, we support killing people in the community, we believe that's what God calls us, the association also is autonomous and has no business affiliating with such a church. The association also has to take a stand. You can take a stand without encroaching on a local church's autonomy. They have the ability to make their decisions, and the congregation, the collective body, of all of our churches together also can take a stand. And there's some things that simply should not be. There is no room to openly oppose Christ. There is no room to openly oppose our God. So I stand against the BWA. I stand against any affiliation with the BWA. I stand against the continued giving and supporting of Baylor if they're not willing to actually adhere to our standards. When people see Baylor and they see what Baylor is doing, and then they see that we are directly supporting them, what their direct, rightful conclusion will be is that we support the things that Baylor supports. And I don't like that, because that's anti-Christian. That is against what we've been told to support as God's church. So there's a whole lot of belly aching, a whole lot of griping. I don't want to just leave it there. What does this mean? What do we do? I am not calling us to leave the BGCT. I'm calling us, first of all, to pray. Pray for change. Pray that the convention will turn around. Pray that wise leadership will rise up. Pray that some of the movements seen in this convention, despite their failure, will wake people up, and that changes will be made to align with Christ. It is my hope that we'll be able to work together for the good. So that's what happened in the association. Thank you.